Zdravím všechny posluchače a vítám vás u podcastu Honzy Bučka. Dnes je mým hostem Jack Burt. Momentálně se nacházím na Teplické konzervatoři a díky Ladislavovi Kozderkovi zde mohl mít masterclass Jack Burt. Doktor Jack Burt působí jako profesor hry na trubku na School of Performing Arts na University of Maine od roku 2004. Je absolventem Baldwin-Wallace College, University of South Carolina a University of Texas a zastával pozice prvního trumpetisty v Mexiku a Texasu. Dnešní díl bude zase v angličtině, takže se přesouváme do angličtiny. Dr. Jack Burt has served as professor of trumpet at the University of Maine School of Performing Arts since 2004. He is a graduate of Baldwin-Wallace College, the University of South Carolina and the University of Texas, and has held principal trumpet positions in Mexico and Texas. Thank you, Jack, that you accepted my invitation. It's a real pleasure for me.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this.
We will make this podcast in two parts. Mm-hmm. In the first part, we will talk about your overall career and from your beginnings to these days. Mm-hmm. And in the second part, I will have some questions.
Sure.
So, how did you start playing the trumpet?
I moved around a lot in the United States, and in most places in the United States, you start band in the 6th grade. That's like 12 years old. My brother, I'm the youngest. My brother, both my sisters were all in music. I stole my brother's cornet when he was in 6th grade and I was in kindergarten, 6 years apart, and would play it all the time. And he ended up giving up, and so I had to wait 5 more years before I could play cornet in the band. And I just kind of liked it, and we moved around a little bit. And I didn't get really serious about the trumpet until I was in high school in Florida. I grew up in South Florida, graduated high school at least, in South Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area. And I was a good trumpet player. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I went to see a teacher to get better. And he asked me, he said, Jack, what do you want to do with yourself? And I said, I don't know, I think I want to be a trumpet player. And he said, well, with the kind of embouchure you have right now, that's not going to work. You're going to have to start all over. And it will take about 6 months to place your embouchure in a position where you can survive playing trumpet for the rest of your life.
It was bad, or?
It was very low. Trumpets need flesh inside the mouthpiece to vibrate for the mouthpiece to sit on. I was playing very low, and I just wouldn't have survived because there wasn't enough muscle there to work. So even though I was the best trumpet player in the band, my band director, to his eternal credit, said, okay, Jack, you move down to the bottom, and when you're ready to come back up, you go ahead. And many band directors would not have done that. So he saved my career, my possible career. And I continued to do that. I was successful, and that's when I went to Ohio for college, to Baldwin-Wallace College. It's outside of Cleveland. My teacher was James Darling in the Cleveland Orchestra, and a lady named Mary Squire, who was the first female trumpet professor in the country. This is 1970, and she started earlier than that, but she was a remarkable musician. And I bounced around between the two of them. Didn't matter each semester. Mr. Darling would say, I think you're going to stay with Mary next semester. Or Mrs. Squire would say, I think you take over to Jim. There was no fighting. I got the best of both from them. I went to Berlin after graduation, and I was going to be musicology. I was going to study musicology, music history, Musikwissenschaft at the TU University in Berlin. But that's when I finally got the trumpet bug. I was listening to the Berlin Philharmonic. I was listening to all the orchestras come into Berlin. This is 1980, West Berlin, the wall, everything that was different. And I made the decision to come back to the United States to continue my education, because I wasn't really prepared to be a professional yet.
And do you think that music life was better in Europe? Or what was the main purpose that you wanted to study in Germany?
I chased a girl. There was a German cellist who was at my school, and she said, "Why don't you come to Berlin?" And I did. I would never have done it without her. Nothing ever came of our relationship, but she invited me, and I stayed with her for a while before I found another place. And I wouldn't have had the courage to go, and I spoke a little German, not much yet, but she offered me a safe place to go and experience something. I had always been a fan of the Berlin Philharmonic from how I was exposed to classical music. It was a kind of a unique story that it was the first sound I ever heard was the Berlin Philharmonic with Herbert von Karajan, which is a really unique orchestral sound that doesn't exist today. And so that's why I went to Berlin. But I realized I didn't want to study musicology. I wanted to play the trumpet, but I wasn't really prepared to be a professional yet. So I went back to Germany. Excuse me, back to the United States. Interesting story about that. The greatest musicians keep lists of the greatest concert they ever attended. I have like 10 very different things. But number one on that list is a concert of the Bruckner Fifth Symphony in 1980 by the Berlin Philharmonic with Herbert von Karajan. It was just something I'll never forget. 44 years later, I heard the same piece with the same orchestra in the same hall, and I'd never heard the piece again live. So I heard it in 1980 in Berlin, and then last month I heard it in Berlin, entirely different orchestra. There's not a single person from the Karajan era, but it was still really, I knew orchestra members, I'm friends with people in the orchestra, and I was like, wow, 40 years ago, I was sitting in this, basically in this same chair. And it was something, time flies, but music stays, and I had the same impression of the piece now that I did then. It's just this overwhelming sound.
And do you think that style changed?
The orchestral style has changed a lot. Orchestras are a lot leaner. They're more virtuosic and technical in some ways. They have less oomph and weight and heft. That's just the nature of the beast. Styles change. It's not good or bad. I miss that sound, but I understand the process of time, and I thoroughly enjoyed hearing the Berlin Philharmonic playing it in a different way, because I heard things I'd never heard before that I didn't hear with von Karajan. And I heard things with von Karajan that I didn't hear with Kirill Petrenko. It's perfect. I love it. Music is not one thing. It can be any kind of thing, and you have to allow people to come at it in their own way. So it was kind of a very kind of, I don't know. It took me back when I realized I'm listening to the same piece I heard 44 years ago in the same place. That was probably the most important moment musically for me as a listener.
Yeah, and so how it's continued? From that 1980.
1980.
Yeah. How it's continued? Your life.
I went to college, studied trumpet, got a master's degree from the University of South Carolina, moved to Mexico, and played in two orchestras for 3 years until there was a financial collapse in Mexico after their series of earthquakes in 1985. So that's when I decided to go to Texas and work on my doctorate.
Yeah, and it was... do you think it was different, like that orchestral style in Mexico?
Oh, very different. It was a very international orchestra. All orchestras have a personality. The Cleveland Orchestra does not sound like the Berlin Philharmonic, and never has. The Vienna Philharmonic does not sound like anybody. The Czech Philharmonic does not sound... And in some cases, as we continue with globalization, things start sounding more and more alike, but there's still differences. They're still different, very much so, especially like in the case of what we do, trumpets, whether you play a piston trumpet or a rotary trumpet, and the sound you have in your head is going to be different than somebody in Chicago or Cleveland or Los Angeles. And it's not a question of good or bad. It's great that they're different. I don't want everyone to sound like the Berlin Philharmonic. I want the Cleveland Orchestra to sound like they do. I want the Boston Symphony, which is a great orchestra, to sound like them. And if you know the music well, you can hear the differences. To some people, it's all the same. It just depends on your background and your exposure and your study.
Yeah, and so what about Texas? How it was there?
Texas was school for me. I went to study with a teacher, a man named Raymond Crisera, who was one of the greatest trumpet teachers and players of the 20th century. Now, nobody knows who he is, except for trumpet players. And he was principal trumpet of the Metropolitan Opera at the age of 17. And then the war happened, World War II, and he came back and he said, I don't think I want to do that, be in an opera anymore. So he became the number one freelance trumpet player in New York City for 30 years. Anybody that needed a trumpet player, they called Ray Crisera first. And he just walked in, played, went home. And then after about 30 years of that, he said, I think I want to start teaching. So he was offered the position at the University of Texas and taught there for another 30 years. So he had two 30-year careers that are just astonishing. One of the greatest trumpet players. You've heard him and you don't even know it. Commercials. He played with Leopold Stokowski, George Zell, Herbert von Karajan, Queen, Janis Joplin. What's the band? Wings. He was whoever they needed. They called Ray. This guy had a career like nobody's business. He knew Igor Stravinsky personally. He called him Igor, and he was my teacher, and he was the right teacher for me because I've talked about this today in my master classes. I had serious kind of faults as a player, and he worked me. I was in my late 20s at the time when I saw him, and he fixed my head as much as my playing. It got me to be more just a better trumpet player and more relaxed and focusing on the right things rather than feeling...
I'm curious, what do you mean by faults?
Well, I played too tight. I would have trouble with... I'd miss notes. I'd have trouble with certain technical passages, or just various mistakes or weaknesses in a player. Like so-and-so doesn't have a good forehand in tennis. Or you can... this person can't guard somebody if they go left in basketball. It's like that, specific technical issues. And he fixed a lot of them. And it's interesting because more than anything, he fixed my head so that I could continue to be a teacher to myself. He always said that it was his job to make his job irrelevant. One day I was in a class, having a lesson with him, and I was really mad about something. And I put my horn down and just kind of started rocking. And he said, Jack, what's the matter? And I said, Mr. Crisera, I should be able to do this already. He said, Jack, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say in a lesson my entire life. Just like slap. He says, you can't fix what is in the past. All you can do is face today and try to make today a little bit better. And then the next day you do the same thing, which is what I've been saying today. It's just little improvements. Don't put expectations on yourself to be perfect, because it's not going to happen. You just want to be in a journey that gets you from here to wherever you want to go in little steps. And that was something that I really stayed with me for a long time.
Was it a process for you?
It was not beating myself up for making mistakes, reacting positively to difficult situations, figuring out a way to do something that's efficient and helpful rather than forcing or struggling. We all kind of get in our own way when we practice and we don't make progress. And, you have to talk to yourself like you're your best friend. But when you play the trumpet, what do you say to yourself? I put the horn down and I was like, Jack, what an idiot you are. How can you make that mistake? That's natural. But I'm like, okay, how am I going to fix that? Just reasonable ways of making the next step, whatever it is, how small. Because every step takes you to a new place. And you just have to be patient and not put the pressure of this one huge goal that is far away. It's like you just got to keep your head down and work.
Yeah, and do you think that pressure of comparing to each other for trumpet players, because we are trumpet players, so that's why I'm saying trumpet players, it's hard for us because music is something we can't compare, but we still need to do an audition, you know.
Absolutely.
How it was for you?
Well, Mr. Crisera was the one thing that he did and that I try to do in my studio. We're competitive. We're trumpet players. We all want to play first trumpet, right? Nobody wants to play third. But we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to get better. And Mr. Crisera made us feel like a community. None of us stuck knives in each other's backs. None of us criticized the other. We were all really helpful to each other. There's not a single student I can think of in my school at that time that wasn't supportive. And you don't think of trumpet players as being, guys that help each other, but we are. We're very supportive. We're like a bunch of happy Labrador retrievers. We love what we're doing and we just run around and play. We're not aggressive, even though musically we need to be at times. No, we support each other. And Mr. Crisera made that mood. And I try to do that with my own students. And my colleagues tell me, your trumpet students really get along pretty well. I'm like, I'm lucky. It doesn't always happen. Because every person is different and has their own weaknesses, their own fears that they try to hide or they cover up with meanness or anger. That's what humans do, right? But you want to create the most positive work environment that you can. And that's what Mr. Crisera did. That's what I try to do. I've taught trumpet since 1992. So 36 years or 36 years, something like that. 32. I don't know. I can't add. I'm a trumpet player. We count to 4 and start over.
For sure.
Yeah.
So what did you do after Texas?
My goal was to either play in an orchestra or teach college. They both are stable. Well, college teaching is much more stable than orchestra playing. But I loved both of them, and I loved to teach, and I loved the college, I don't know, the world of college where, I've taught over 30 years, and I've never worked in the summer. I raised 2 boys in their mid-20s now, and I went to every one of their baseball games. I was there. My father never saw me play the trumpet. He never saw me play sports because he was working, right? That's what people did in the 60s and the 70s. And I didn't want that for my kids. And the college, fall semester, spring semester, allows for summer. And I'm always, I was always there for my kids. Plus, I could come and travel and do things. It's a very... you don't make a ton of money as a professor, but the benefits are really good. The life benefits. Quality of life comes in a lot of ways. I left Texas where I had 2 really good orchestra jobs for Maine, where I haven't played in an orchestra in 20 years regularly. But Maine is such a beautiful state. My kids are, it's like the Czech Republic. It's just beautiful. Maine is beautiful. There's lakes, woods, trees. We have an ocean. And my kids, in the summertime, they swim in a perfectly clear lake. And then in the wintertime, they ski in a mountain that they know beautifully. So to me, that's a good trade-off for not playing in an orchestra for, in Texas, which didn't have any of those things. Even though my job in Texas was wonderful. I had a wonderful set of colleagues. So once I graduated from Texas, I was able to get a job in South Texas. And I taught there for 13 years. And during that time, I met a woman who became my wife, and she was from Maine. And it just worked out that a job opened up in Maine. I went to Maine and said, wow, this is beautiful. I'd love to live here. But you can't pick where you live. In the university, you go where the jobs are. There's probably 5 trumpet jobs that do what I do full-time in the country every year. 5. And one opened up in Maine, and I got the job, luckily. So we were able to move where I wanted to live. I can't ask for more than that as a person. And now I get to come here to the Czech Republic, to Berlin, to Austria, as part of my job, and do research and bring music back and bring musicians back to my school. It's been a wonderful 20 years coming to Maine now.
I also wanted to ask how you make that good feeling for students. I mean, that not competitive feeling.
Yeah. The first thing is that there is competition, and you have to understand that. There are auditions for seats in a band. Everybody wants to be better than somebody else. But we say in English, fish rots from the head. if I'm a jerk and if I put pressure on my kids to, come on, you can do this, you can beat that guy, which some teachers do to create more competition and maybe make them work harder even, that's just not my style. I want every student to know that I'm on their side and that I'm going to help them wherever they're at get to the next step, wherever that is and whatever it is. I don't care who wins. I don't put pressure on them to do better than somebody else. I do not care who's first, second, third, fourth, whatever. My job is for them to come to me once a week, come into my office, and I help them. They know that my office now, since the pandemic, they have key to my office. When I'm not there, they come in my office and practice. They come in my office and play duets. They loved coming in and playing duets. When Saturday night I'm home and they're on campus, and they're like, let's go play duets. So they go in my office. They get in my office and they play on my horns. They play duets or they practice with each other, whatever. So it creates kind of like a positive home, first of all. And they know that I'm not judging them by their results. My goal is to only help them. You know, it's an important concept for me because the University of Maine is a state institution. The University of Maine is paid for by the taxes of the people of Maine. I'll take anybody that comes that wants to study. That doesn't mean they'll succeed, but I think it's my job to give them a chance. Now, if this is big private universities or private colleges like Curtis or Northwestern, there are so many people that want in, and the teachers can only teach so much, you might not get in. But my school is isolated enough that I pretty much take what comes and I do my best with them. And some of them are really good, and some of them take a while to become good, or maybe don't and they find something else to do. That's part of the job too. A person who's 18 changes their major probably 2 times on average when they go to college. One son changed his major, my other son didn't. And so it's something that you just have to accept. And my goal, my job is to be honest with them about where they're at, what they need to do, what I think their success rate might be, and ask them about what they think they should be doing and what you think you need to be doing.
Okay, I think now we can move to that second part
Sure.
of our podcast. And my first question is, do one just to play, or did you also want to become a teacher?
Both. At first, I just wanted to play. I'm a natural sharer of my knowledge. If we're somewhere and I look and I see, oh, there was a Civil War battle there. You know who happened there? Robert E. Lee did. But anything I know, I open my mouth and tell people, even if they already know it. It's just a natural kind of thing. I'm fascinated by everything in the world for the most part, and I like talking about it. So I love trumpet, so I don't mind talking about trumpet. It's not, I wouldn't say it's my favorite thing in my job. I think my relationship with the students and my own playing is more important to me, but the teaching is in hand with it. I can't teach well if I don't play well. I don't understand. There's history of great violin teachers and singers who don't sing for their students, who don't play. They just talk. And you have to be a very, very talented person to be able to understand everything verbally. Mr. Coursera said to me, Jack, when you get to your school, play for them. They need to hear your sound. They need to hear what a real trumpet sound is, because they probably only heard the person that was sitting one seat in front of them in high school. And that's not the sound you want them to have. So my playing is very important to me so that I can demonstrate to my students what it should sound like, because you cut through all the words and I just play it like that. And that works. You know, it's not the only way to teach, but sometimes kids just need to hear it.
Do you like teaching, and what does it give you? I think that first question, do you like teaching, is
I do
obvious.
like teaching. I don't teach for what it gives me. I think I just enjoy the process. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy the subject matter. I find it fascinating. You know, how long? I was in 7 hours in there, teaching the same thing basically to 5 sets of people. I had a blast. That was fun. I'm giving them something that hopefully they didn't have before and that they can go take it. That's all I care about, is passing on some of my own expertise. Mr. Coursera said he treats his students like less experienced colleagues. Think about that. He doesn't treat you as this low student that you have to bow to. He's a teacher you bow to. No, he's a guy that you work with that he just knows a little bit more. So he's going to help you. That's kind of how I approach it. My students call me Jack. There's no Dr. Burt at my school. In Texas, that was a Hispanic culture was Dr. Burt. No matter what I tried, they were calling me Dr. Burt. I have students who are 45, 50 years old still call me Dr. Burt. I'm like, will you please call me Jack? But no, they can't. But in Maine, the Northeast is very different, and I'm Jack, and that's fine by me. I don't care. But we're more or less equals. You have some things you need to do if you want to succeed, and I have control over a few of those things, very few. The rest of the university has a lot of control over whether you succeed. Your theory class, your ear training class, your band, your gen eds, your science, your math. I'm not involved with any of that. You come in once a week and I try to help you. I'm done,
How do you relax? Do you think it's important for your mental health?
I can't do anything for 12 months of the year. I can't play trumpet for 12 months of the year. I can't play golf for 12 months of the year. I can't ski for 12 months of the year. I have to have variety in what I do. And that's one of the reasons I really love moving up north back again, because in Texas there were no seasons. It was hot and less hot. Whereas in Maine, you have 4 seasons. And every time a new one comes around, you're like, wow, check that out. Look at those leaves. Or it's getting warm. We can go swimming soon. Or, man, I can't wait to go skiing. And that's true of my personal life, too, in terms of I'm going to put the trumpet away for a couple of months, because I don't have anything to do and I can play golf. And then I get tired of playing golf, and I'm like, I think I'm going to start playing my trumpet again, because it works out that way. So variety is a huge aspect of my relaxation, being able to move and do different things. I read like crazy. There hasn't been a day in my life since I turned 25 where I haven't been reading a book, at least one every day. And it's just fascinating. I wandered around Prague yesterday, and I was just stunned. I knew everyone said, oh, Prague's beautiful. Okay, it's beautiful. And I'm like, holy, look at this place, And I just touched the tiniest bit of this, I've lived in Vienna for a long time here and there, and I know the city really well. And that's been fun. I visit Berlin, and I feel like it's part of my life as well. Variety is something that's super important to me.
And do you think it's good for trumpet players to have longer breaks?
Yes. Trumpet is an instrument that can damage you. And there used to be this saying that if you take one day off from practicing, you'll notice. If you take 2 days off, your colleagues will notice. If you take 3 days off, everyone notices. I think it's ridiculous. Some of the best musicians in the world take time off. And the trumpet is, as Doc Severinsen said, all we're doing is creating scar tissue here. This is not a healthy thing. Pressing a piece of metal against your lips. There's all sorts of different things that can go wrong. Dystonia, lip pressure, hand cramps, everything. It's a dangerous business playing the trumpet. And so the more time you give yourself off, the less damage you do. I love taking 2 weeks off, not because I don't want to play the trumpet. I want something else to do. But I love coming back to it and sitting in my basement and doing the stuff we were doing today, where I just play through my Chikowitz, I play through my stamp, and I just feel myself getting back into it, and it's all there. It's complete. I haven't lost a thing. You need time away from the horn.
Is there anything else you're doing to keep in shape physically?
Well, I'm 66 years old. To me, that was old when I was young. And I thought, how can anybody play trumpet that old? and I'm fine. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good trumpet player still. I have no pain. I still have the range and power I have. I have the endurance I want to have. As you get older, I think the things that happen are your fingers slow down a little bit and your tongue slows down. And so if I have a concert that has anything hard, like a recital, I work really hard on my finger technique and I work really hard on tonguing, if there's any kind of multiple tonguing. Because I've talked to other older players and they're like, yeah, hands and fingers, you know. But other than that, I just play and my chops feel healthy. To me, that's the most important thing. They feel healthy. I play golf, and when I play, I've had back problems the last few years. I had 3 back surgeries. I talked about that at the thing where during the pandemic I couldn't walk 50 feet. My leg would just fall asleep, and I had pressure in my spine. And it took a while to figure out what the solution was, but now I can walk again. But during the pandemic, I could sit, so I recorded 400 etudes and just kind of like focused on my trumpet. It was really, for my trumpet playing, it was a good time. But now that I can golf, golf, when you play around with golf, you're walking 6 miles. I don't sit in a cart. I hate carts. It's a good exercise for a person my age. I can't play basketball anymore. My whole life I played pickup basketball with guys that were younger than me, full court pickup basketball. I always wanted to be the worst guy on the court, and I often was, and it was my exercise. I felt great. It was so much fun. But, 56-year-old men can't play basketball because it's too hard on the knees. It just goes away. So that's when golf and swimming and stuff came into being, where I need to be active, but I can't do the thing that I used to do. It was a hard thing for me when I emptied my locker and put the shoes away. I actually cried because I was like, shit, I'm done. This is like an end of a time of my life. I can't do this anymore. That was very hard, but it's life, and so I moved on to golf. Not moved on, but focused more on it.
And what else you do in your free time, if you have free time?
We have a camp. That's what we call them, camps. In Maine, it's a lake house, basically, that my wife's family has, my wife's mom. And we go there, we swim, we kayak in the summertime. In the wintertime, I go cross-country skiing. When I haven't in a few years because of this, but I will be able to this coming. And, try to just keep active, read. My wife and I, we're homebodies. We stay home. We travel a bit, but we're really very happy just being where we are. And, that's it. I mean, we have a happy marriage. It's a great thing. I'm very lucky. And that's enough for me because I'm often recovering from all the work I just did. I'm like, let's just stay home.
Do you have a memory from a concert that you like to remember?
A bunch. I told the story about playing for the Pope. 250,000 people in an open field in Texas. That was pretty cool. And it was unique because I wasn't nervous, because it was just, when there's that many people, you just can't focus on them. It's just fun, right? For me, I enjoy hearing concerts more than I enjoy playing them. So I have a list, Bruckner 5 with Carillon, 2 or 3 Notzel brass concerts that just lifted me to no end. I just think about them all the time. Hearing Christian, what's his name? Thielemann. Christian Tetzlaff, the violinist, play a solo recital in Bangor, Maine, in a church all made of wood. It was astonishing. The Danish String Quartet, where you just hear the musicians of the absolute greatest caliber. I'd rather do that than play. I love playing, but I'm never going to get the excitement that I get from hearing someone else do something grander,
Do you have a memory when things didn't go quite as planned? And how do you handle it when that happens to you?
Yeah, happens a lot. Gabor Tarkovi talks about, trumpet players, we miss notes. We're not supposed to, but we do. And when we do, everybody hears it. We're not clarinetists. We're not violinists in the back row. Every note we play, somebody hears. Mr. Crisera said to be a trumpet player, you have to come to you have to accept the fact that every note you make every mistake you make is going to be heard for 7 blocks. Like everybody. Oh, gee. Mr. Crisera used to, after someone's recital, a faculty member would come up and say, "Oh, your kid did so good. Too bad about that one note," because everybody has to say, "I heard it," right? And he would always say, "Well, did you count the right ones too?" Which is a great way to think about it. But yes, I've had a number of mishaps, some of which come back to haunt me without me realizing it. One concert in Mexico, I played in a hole. Bop, 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 bap. Me in the wrong place, trumpet, right? Everybody knew it was me. I made a mistake. It's like happens. But 20 years later, I was playing that piece, and I almost froze because it was coming up, and I'm like, and I kind of tried to hide because I didn't want to do it again. And then when it went past and I didn't make a mistake, I kind of played soft, and I came back and then I went for it again because it was like scar tissue. Just that one thing that happened 15 years earlier. It scared me. Gabor talks about that. He says, all you can do is go home and have a bad night's sleep and start over again. And that's, you have to have a short memory and just keep going.
Are you nervous before concerts? How do you work with that, or do you do anything against it?
As I said today, nerves are really a factor of feeling uncomfortable in a situation. They're not really fear of making a mistake or feeling that you're not good enough. It's really just, oh, this is new. If you put somebody in a position that they're not comfortable with, they get nervous. They look around. And music is that way too. So the best way is to repeat the process. Play a recital a number of times, practice for people, play for people, record yourself, put your pressure on yourself to say, okay, right now I'm going to play this piece and I'm not going to stop. Because that not being able to stop is one of the key things that make us nervous, because we know when we practice we can stop. I get nervous when I play my solo recitals, but I really do enjoy it. I enjoy the process. So I know I'm not going to play perfect. It just doesn't happen, right? I'm not Sergei. I'm not any of those trumpet players. I'm a guy at the University of Maine trying to play for students. And I play as best as I can, and I go home. I try not to sweat it. I want to play good. I want to play music that they're going to like. And that's usually enough. That's usually enough to feel really good about yourself and that you're doing something positive.
What trumpet do you use? Does the choice of instrument matter that much?
Yeah, it matters a lot. The better you get, the more it matters. A weak student can't tell the difference between a bad trumpet and a good trumpet. It doesn't matter. They're not good enough to hear the differences yet. As you get better, the differences become more and more obvious. And they're sometimes not even sound differences. They're what you feel like when you're playing. Or they're a little tightness. That, I don't like the way this feels on this note. And we're all like nuts about finding the right instrument. The trumpets are, unlike French horn and trombone, we have a lot of them and very different ones. I own like 7, maybe. A B-flat piston, a C piston, a B-flat rotary, a C rotary, a Ganch horn, Hope Thomas Ganch horn, an E-flat trumpet, a piccolo trumpet, a flugelhorn. Because we need all these different colors. And it's just something that's part of the gig now, and it's fun to be able to switch and make a different color. My basic horn is a B flat. I play the Ganch horn mostly during the day. When I play for my lessons, it's the horn I'm most comfortable on, the one that makes me feel happy and comfortable. But I play it sometimes in recitals. Sometimes I'll play a different B flat, like a regular piston, or I'll play my rotaries a lot because I like the sound of them in certain kinds of music. It's nice to have the choices.
And what mouthpiece do you use? Do you think there's such a thing as a perfect mouthpiece?
Only if it fits you, and does what you need it to do. There is kind of you can find a mouthpiece that works for you. Mouthpieces are a source of paranoia and craziness in trumpet players, no question about it. Doc Severinsen owns probably 3,000 mouthpieces. He's always trying to find the right one. He's 93 years old, and he still hasn't found the right mouthpiece. One of the greatest trumpet players of all time. Thomas Conchas played the same mouthpiece for 26 years. Never changes. It doesn't have no silver on it or anything. I don't know how he doesn't get brass infection or anything, but it's just, he doesn't change. He doesn't need to. That being said, as you grow up and change, your body changes, your clothes change, right? The same thing's true with mouthpieces. My body changed. I weigh 70 pounds more than I did when I was 30. I was a skinny kid, and I didn't have all the kind of like heft that I do now. And we're calling that a good thing, heft, right? So mouthpieces can change based on your health, based on your energy level, based on how old you are. But it's really a question of just finding what works. Different mouthpieces work better for different trumpets. That's why we're always kind of looking. I don't play the same mouthpieces on my rotary trumpets that I do on my pistons because it doesn't work for me that way. And it's a chore. It's something we always kind of trying to find the better one. Maybe this will do a little better, but it's never going to end.
And what trumpet player or teacher influenced your playing the most?
My playing. That's a really good question. I have taken little bits of so many people. Attitude and relaxation I try to get from Thomas Conch because I think he's my favorite trumpet player in the world. I just love, he makes me happy. And he sings. He just sings when he plays. I love that. I love Gabor Tarkovi. I love most of the trumpets that have played the Berlin Philharmonic. It's a sound for me. It's not that they're better. It's just like, man, I love that sound. But Phil Smith and every great trumpet player has had an influence on me, whether I play like them or not. I think about them for like, if I hear a piece of music and somebody plays it a certain way, oh man, so and so did that. I like that. I'm going to try to steal that. And whether it's solo or orchestral, I listen to a lot of Matthias Höfs and Reinhold Friedrich and Salida and any number of great soloists to hear music that I might want to play. A lot of the music soloists play, I don't want to play. It's too hard, or it's like I don't like it. But when I find something that really moves me, I'm like, I'm going to play that. That's cool. And so I'm always kind of looking for something to add to my repertoire of what I could play at school, just for myself. It's not like I'm going to go out and make a record.
What is important when working together in a trumpet section?
Everybody has to respect each other. There's no more, and I'm not talking about professional orchestras like Vienna or Berlin or Chicago. I'm talking about bands. I'm talking about quintets or small groups, right? Because that's my experience nowadays. It's respecting each other, speaking kindly. If someone does something that isn't right, you have to find a way to talk to them that doesn't make them feel bad. You're like, hey, could we try? You phrase it in such a way that you're being positive. Hey, let's have a look at this thing here. I want to see if we can get this a little better. Not like, hey, you were flat there. Can you fix that? But that's something that happens, right? When people don't know how to work with each other, it creates tension. There are all sorts of horror stories of orchestral sections, not just trumpets, that don't get along and they don't talk to each other. The principal oboe and the principal flute of the Chicago Symphony didn't talk to each other for 15 years. They sat next to each other. Can you imagine that? One offended the other and they never spoke. They played beautifully together, but it's silly. Really is silly when you think about it. I mean, this is supposed to be one of the most beautiful things that humans create is classical music. orchestral music. Think about a Mozart symphony or a Brahms symphony or Mahler or any of this. It's the high point of human endeavor in some ways. And for people to sit there and bitch at each other and not really want to sit and move their chair a little bit, it's kindergarten. But it's what happens a lot. And it comes from a lack of being able to talk to each other, I think, with kindness. Yeah.
Can you imagine yourself playing a different instrument? I mean, different instrument than trumpet.
Yes. If I was not a trumpet player, well, when I was in high school, I almost switched to horn. I love French horn. But I didn't have the courage to do it. I'm not sure if I'm really happy being a trumpet player because I love the horn.
Yeah?
But if I was going to redo my life, I would be a violist. Because they get to sit in the middle. Everything's happening around them. And they have the least pressure because they're playing the middle voices. And it's a rich sound, and it's right smack in the middle, right? And so you have the violins on one side and the cellos on the other. You're hearing everything the orchestra is doing, and you're in the best spot. So, and I know that it fits my body. I tried to play cello once, I didn't like it. Violin is too small, I'm a big person. But viola, my hands were perfect on viola. I was like, I could play this. But maybe in another life. I love the viola. My favorite instrument, actually, though, is the oboe. A great oboe player is one of the greatest things in the world. It's just a sound that is so uniquely expressive and sad and wistful. I love oboe, but I wouldn't want to play it. It drives you crazy. The reeds.
What do you listen to in your free time?
Classical music. I listen to folk music, like the Danish String Quartet and some other kind of folk music. I've been a jazz fan my whole life. I used to run a jazz band for 15 years at my school before I switched to teaching music history. I have a very broad kind of taste. I don't like pop music that much. I like old pop music. Today's pop, it doesn't speak to me. I don't like rap. I don't like hip hop. I'm just too old for it. It came along after I'd already made up my mind about music. My son is a person who writes rap music, who writes beats on a computer, sells them to musicians, and is a DJ. It's amazing the talent he has. But I'm like, really? Well, is that cool? I'm like, okay. I'm glad you're happy, because for me, it goes past me. I don't hate it. I just doesn't speak to me. I mean, there's music I don't like that is classical music. I've never been a big fan of Shostakovich. A couple of his pieces are incredible. Most of the time, I don't like it. It's just too bitter and dark. I don't like Liszt. I think Liszt is a waste of time. And there's a lot of music that I just think is mediocre that gets played a lot. But I listen to a lot of things. I do listen to piano music. I do listen to violinists. Whatever's good, you know. Duke Ellington said, if it sounds good, it is good. Wynton had another great quote that he said, he likes music that doesn't sound like money. And that's what he said about rap music. Rap music sounds like money to him. But there's some music that's really good, even if it's in a rap style. And you're like, wow, that's really clever. And I don't know who those people are, but they exist. But it's just not my thing.
Is it hard to find time for your family while being a professional musician? I mean, I don't mean right now, but when...
No. My wife is a professional musician. Sometimes we play together. We both are going in different directions. It's just part of our lives, right? We teach at the same university. We often don't see each other all day long.
And what instrument?
She's a cellist,
yeah.
And she teaches ear training, learning pitches and chords and stuff. So when we come home, we don't talk about work. I don't tell her anything. She doesn't tell me anything. We just deal with the cat and the dogs or whatever, and the kids. And the only time I've been really away from her this is the longest I've ever been away from her. This is going on 7 weeks now. I've been gone. And our boys are out of the house, so she's by herself. But she has a lot of friends and plays. She's in a chamber music group that does a lot of playing, so she's surrounded by her friends. Her mom lives around the corner. So I'm lucky. You know, she's not upset about this. She just wants me to go do things that make me happy.
And do you miss her?
Yes. We talk. You know, it's weird. I remember what it was like talking to your family in 1980. You go to the post office, you pay a bunch of money, and there's like a 2-second delay, and nobody can talk to each other. Now I can sit her and talk to her on the phone, look at her. She shows me pictures of the dog while we're talking, you know. So we're very comfortable with each other. We're an old, she's not as old as me, but we're an old couple that understands each other. So there's no trouble. I'm very lucky that way because some people wouldn't let their husband go away for 6 weeks to Europe. 8 weeks.
Where do you get your motivation?
It's just there. I love music. I love talking about music. I love showing things that I think are really cool to students. I teach music history. And I get so bent out of shape, really excited, talking about the second act of Figaro to these students because they've never heard it before. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. You're going to see how blah, blah, blah. Then I'm going to talk about Beethoven. And then I'm going to talk about Brahms. And I'm like, each one is like, this is the coolest thing in the world. It's like, oh, this is my favorite. And every one of them is my favorite because I just love it. You know, teaching trumpet is more like what we saw today, where I've got to drill students to get through some processes where they just do this. You need to do this. You need to do it again. Let's go. This is how you're going to get better. And eventually we can start talking about music. But a lot of it is just, okay, let's do it again. Let's play this and listen to me. Now you play it. You know, solving problems.
In what ways are music and life connected?
I can't admit. Well, I think that there's great music. I mean, better people than me have said this. You know, Nietzsche, you know, without music, life would be a mistake. Rachmaninoff said, music is enough for your life, but there's not enough life for music. Because it's just endless, right? And that's how I feel. It's just, I just love it so much and never get tired. And it's still there as I get older. But as far as life and music, I find it very, I said once in a class, I was teaching the St. Matthew Passion by Bach, which is a pretty dry piece of music to some people. I think it's the greatest piece of music ever written. I think it's the most human, most just expressive thing in the world. And I said, if we were ever going to be attacked from space and people were going to focus their laser beams at Earth and said, why shouldn't we kill you all? I think the only thing we'd do is show them music. You know, play a Bach chorale for them. Play a Bach B minor partita. Play a Beethoven piano sonata. This is the only kind of stuff that is absolutely 100% positive that we have done in life. Poetry, sure. Painting, all those things. Art is what I'm talking about. My most favorite, I shouldn't say my favorite, the piece that means the most to me beyond the St. Matthew Passion is the Ninth Symphony of Gustav Mahler. To me, the first movement is an explanation of life on Earth. And it's complete. There's no words. He didn't say a word about it. He just wrote this piece of music, and everybody who ever listened to it said, this is about life and death and giving up, which is true, right? Alban Berg wrote to his wife about the first movement and he says, death keeps coming and coming and coming and becoming overwhelming to the main character of the piece. And at the end, there's just a natural resignation, and you realize that, hey, the earth is beautiful, and we're going to go back to it. You know, we come out of it, we go back to it. Earth to earth, dust to dust, like the Bible says, right? And it's right there in the music. And I heard that the first time I ever heard it. And then I read it 8 years later by a great composer saying exactly what I thought the first time I heard the piece. So it's there. You know, there's this connection. Music and life have incredible connections that you can, the more you study it, the more you live it, it's there, no question.
Has focusing on the present moment while playing ever been a problem for you?
Actually, focusing on the past is worse. If you have to be, as a trumpet player when you're performing, you have to be an Italian race car driver with no rearview mirror. You're going forward, and what's behind you doesn't matter. Because if you make a mistake, you can't think about it. You just got to keep going. You can't fix that, so you can't react to it. You just got to keep positive and forward. The present is actually the good thing to be thinking about. What's coming next? Oh, this is cool. I love this part. Oh, this is neat. I'm waiting for this. Good. I screwed up. I chipped that note 10 seconds ago. That's absolutely the worst thing to think about. And that's what we all do because we're human and we criticize ourselves. But thinking positive and in the present, staying in the present is the most important thing when you perform. Being focused on what's coming and playing as best you can. And what comes afterwards or behind you, it doesn't matter.
How do you learn new pieces and how do you practice them?
It depends on the piece. Some pieces are pretty easy. You can kind of grasp them fairly quickly. Other ones, like I worked on 2 premieres a couple years ago, brand new pieces, and it took me a few months. I didn't listen to them. I didn't have any kind of recordings of them, so I had to learn it on my own. Listening, looking at the piano part, playing the trumpet, figuring out where the technical problems were, trying to overcome them. It's just a piecing together process, especially if you don't know what it sounds like because there's no recording. These were both premieres. It's just something you take. Oh, I like this moment here. I think I'm going to stretch it here. My pianist's like, yeah, I heard that too. So you grow into a piece where you become comfortable with it. But it's really a piecing together.
Do you think it's good for musicians or for a musician not to be strictly a classical player, but also play popular music, or like commercial playing?
Yes, I think it's very important. And I don't do that because I've said this, I didn't say this today, but at my age, when I was going to college, as a trumpet player, I grew up in the jazz area in Florida. Played a lot of jazz, listened to a lot of jazz. When I went to college, they're like, oh, you can't play that. You have to play classical. You can be a jazz major, but then you can't do that. So jazz or classical was the choice I had to make. I chose classical, and I was happy with that. And then, like 2 years after I graduated college, Wynton Marsalis shows up. He's had 3 or 4 great jazz albums. He puts out a classical album. Haydn, Hummel, Neruda, Foch. Kicks ass, right? And all of a sudden, everybody that goes into college has to play jazz. And all of a sudden we realized that was stupid. We all should play jazz. We all should play folk music. We all should play any number of different styles to loosen us up so we're less rigid, right? And I'm still a fairly rigid player. That's something I've always fought is trying to play more relaxed. And part of it is because I never was able to do that in my youth. My wife is in a quartet that plays for homeless shelters. And she plays some classical music, but she plays a lot of like Scottish folk music. She plays Irish jigs. They play pop tunes. Anything these people want to hear, she wants to give them. And it's made her a better cellist. She just feels so much comfortable playing whatever, Bach or Schumann or whatever she's doing in the orchestra because this kind of rigidness is out of her playing. And all of them are that way. There's this Japanese violinist, Ryu. She's from Tokyo. She went to school at Maine, and she's a phenomenal classical player. But she also plays like heavy metal violin. It's just incredible. And then she can do folk dances for 10, 15 minutes. She's a complete musician. She can do anything you ask her to do. And that's just like astonishing to me because I never was able to really do that. I wish I was. Too late.
I think it's never too late, or
I
you don't think?
I play things I like to play. I'm playing more and more melodies, songs. I'm not trying to always play the hardest thing I can find. I like to play music that I think people want to hear, and so yeah, I'm fine with what I'm playing as a repertoire. I don't need to make a bunch of changes. I'm glad my wife is doing what she's doing.
Do you think anyone can learn to play a musical instrument?
Absolutely, it's a natural thing. There's very few people that don't have skill. We all talk, we all hear, and most people can hear something good or bad. You know, everybody can hear a trumpet mistake. Everybody can hear when a note's out of tune in an oboe, or a person cracks a note. I mean, that you don't have to be good to know that. Everybody hears that, right? So why did that apply to learning, right? Whether or not you do or not is up to you. There are people that have rhythmic issues that can never seem to relax, and I think there's ways around that, and it involves certain kinds of rhythmic therapy where you teach people, because people get so self-conscious that they freeze. And I think that has a lot to do with why people struggle learning instruments. It's most important to do it when you're young. Just like languages. When you're 7, 6, 7, 8, playing music solves a lot of mental problems. It solves a lot of intellectual, it doesn't solve it, creates intellectual depth, and it's a given, it's a fact. There's no denying that teaching music to people when they're young affects their intelligence, affects their ability to work with people, it affects their happiness later in life. So the earlier you get at this, whether you ever become a professional musician or not, it's good for you.
Do you think it's possible to compete in music?
You have to a certain extent when you're in school. I don't compete with anybody. I mean, I'm not up for a job. I mean, that's not true. I competed for my jobs. I applied. There were, I don't know how many people that put in their names with their resumes and CDs for the 2 jobs that I had, the one in Texas and the one in Maine. I competed, but I competed on my own. I went on my own and I met them. That's how you do it in college. And I met them and I played. And I got to put my best face, my best foot forward. In orchestral auditions or other kind of musical auditions, you're competing directly against people. They just come one at a time, bring them through. Yes, no, yes, no, 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 yes. That's really mentally damaging, I think, because it's just a hard thing to be able to find a way to not feel bad about yourself. I'm very glad that I've stopped doing that. That I had a college job where I could just do what I want and not fight that. Other people are completely immune to it. They just go in there, they play 40 auditions till they get a job. That's what I do. I go in and play, walk home, or drive home, or fly home. It's like, boom, play my show. They might play 10 minutes. Thank you, you're done. Go home. Never play again. Somebody else hears them, keep that person. Let that person, same person, they win. You never know. So there's an unavoidable aspect of competition, but I don't have to do it in my life now.
What do you like the most about music? What do you like the most about music?
I think I said that a little bit earlier, and that I think music is one of the most positive expressions of humanity. It's not the only one. Art, dance, everybody has the thing that moves them the most. For me, it's music. I feel like, when I listen to classical music, I feel like I'm communicating with someone from 200 years ago. I feel like that person's talking to me, and that's really cool. Modern music, same thing. It's like if I'm hearing a Scottish lilt or a waltz or something, it's like I feel like I'm there. I'm in that room with those people in a pub, listening to them play. It puts you in a different place. Music takes you out of, who said it? Music wipes the dust of everyday life off your feet. I think it's a jazz drummer. I can't remember his name, like Elvin Jones or one of the great jazz drummers in the 40s and 50s. Music wipes the everyday dust off your feet. everyday dust of life off your feet. You just feel blessed to be able to do it. I mean, I'm serious. It's something that I think is one of the greatest things a person can do, is be a musician and or be a listener and communicate with these people. When I was in Berlin, I was sitting next to two old German ladies, and we started talking. They were the sweetest ladies, and they've been coming to Berlin Philharmonic concerts since the 60s. And they heard this, and they just like, oh, isn't that a lovely piece? I've never heard that before. Isn't that wonderful? They're old, much older than me. They're probably in their early 80s. And they're just so positive about life. And going and coming to us across town, going to a concert is not easy sometimes, regardless of where you are. But it's such a life-affirming thing. Music is life-affirming. There's no doubt about it. Even when it's sad. Those two pieces I talked about, the St. Matthew Passion, that's about Jesus' crucifixion, right? That's not resurrection. There's no resurrection in that piece. That piece ends on Good Friday, right? The Mahler is about death. It's not about heaven. It's about death. But it's in a death that is like, okay, it's not so bad. We're all going to be part of this earth, That's the kind of thing that music can give you, and it's irreplaceable.
What ideal qualities should a musician have?
Well, there's two ways to look at that. There's the technical. You have to have good rhythm. You have to have a good ear. You have to practice. You have to have decent technique. Otherwise, nobody wants to hear you, right? You have to be good, and you have to work really hard at it, okay? What was the question again? Sorry.
What ideal qualities should a musician have?
The other side is you have to have something to say, right? You have to be able to be a person that people want to listen to. That's why I talk about Thomas Gansch so much. There's a couple of moments in various shows where he just plays the simplest melody in the entire world. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean, or a simple little jazz tune. And it's just heartbreaking how beautiful it is. And, he has something to say, whether it's the most classically technical or virtuosic music, or if it's just a beautiful melody. He has something to say. And that's, I think, super important about a musician. I had a couple of students in my career where I just, whenever they played, I stopped and listened. They were practicing. I go, that's pretty. Just playing a melody or playing an exercise even. It's like, holy moly, did you hear how it connects? And I talk to another teacher and I go, yeah, isn't that cool? It's like, you hear it. These people turn your head and you go, wow, that's really something. And it can be one note. And, having something to say. Beyond all the technique, beyond all the practice, you still have to be a person that someone wants to listen to.
What do you think is the meaning of music?
It's from the time we went into the caves, I think, and left the trees, 20,000, I don't know how many years ago, we created art. We drew things. It's just a natural instinct for us to create something. Maybe to let people know we were here. Maybe it's just an expression of, hey, I want to make something with that, right? It's an unavoidable aspect of human life. People are going to make music. People are going to sing. They're going to dance. They're going to drum. They're going to do whatever. It's something that you just can't eliminate, Woody Allen, the film director, his mother said, without art, we're just monkeys with car keys. And that's absolutely true. Art is what makes us different. It's not the fact that we can build skyscrapers and fly planes. I mean, that's probably not good for the world. Nothing's wrong with music and painting and dancing, right? So without art, we're just monkeys with keys. There's nothing to talk about there.
I have one last question, and that's, if you had to choose one piece of advice for young musicians, what would it be?
Oh boy. It's hard to say because I think that it depends on the person. It's not everybody needs the same advice. I talked about that in the masterclass today. I said there are things that we were doing all day that I've never ever said to certain students because they could do it already, right? But that's a technical aspect about a weakness in their playing. I think the most important thing is if a person wants to be a musician, perform, that you have to commit to having something to say. It can be rock, it can be pop, it can be classical. So many people, we have cookie cutter type musicians. They just practice auditions and they go up, 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 and it's perfect. And so they get a job. And then their whole life they're up, 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 and they never express anything. Whereas you hear another person play that up, 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 and they play it with a different type of passion, and you're like, I like that. That's what I want to hear. Same notes, same rhythm, same intonation, but one always wins. And so having something to say and say things with personality and character, that's all that matters in music, ultimately. I don't get to say that to my students very often because we're working at a very kind of, not a beginning level, but a level that involves a lot of technical and basic things that have to be taken care of before they can really start saying, this is what I have to say. Because you have to have skill. You can't just hand somebody a paintbrush and say, you're going to be a great artist. They have to learn perspective. They have to learn drawing. Obviously, right? The same thing is true in music. You have to develop all these enormous amount of skills before you're in a position to do something positive. That's just how it is. That doesn't mean it's misery until that point, because we all get to play things that are fun, and we're on a progress, and we grow and grow and grow. But where I teach, it's more a question of let's get some stuff squared away so that you can play the way you want to. That's my goal as a teacher.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's a real pleasure for me to have someone like you.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Okay, so thanks a lot, and have a safe trip back home.
To Prague or to Vienna or to Bangor?
I don't know when it will be.
Yeah, I'm leaving for home on October 30th for Bangor. I still have a lot to do. Go to Vienna tomorrow, go to some concerts in Vienna, work with Shaw Girl about some horns and stuff. So it's a long time, but I'll be home soon.
So I'll wish you the best.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Já se s vámi loučím a budu se těšit u dalšího dílu.